Coming along the boards with big Joel Otto.
Otto just elbowed him, and look at this.
And they're just, still the referee's arm has not gone up. Now that there will be some penalties, there's a big gathering.
Trying to keep Roberts out from in front, and now on the far side we've got McSorley and who is it?
Joel
Otto. So two heavyweights do square off on the far side. Joel Otto and Marty McSorley.
It's a full strength, and we got Rob Blake in a scrap now. Blake and Joel Otto, and they wrestle down the ice. Otto winds up on top of Blake.
There is a type of player that the NHL has always needed and never fully celebrated. Not the scorer whose name gets called over the arena speakers every other night. Not the defenseman whose offensive numbers fill highlight packages and contract negotiations. The player who makes none of that possible for everyone around him by doing the work that the cameras rarely find and the statistics never fully capture. The work that happens in the corners at full speed, in front of the net where the ice is contested and the consequences are physical and immediate, in the face-off circle where every single drop of the puck is a small war with real implications for what happens next. Joel Otto spent 15 seasons in the NHL, doing that work at a level that the men who faced him still have not found the right words for. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel, not because the words do not exist, because the experience of facing Joel Otto was the kind of thing that language approaches but never quite reaches. Before anyone discusses what it felt like to stand in front of the net against Joel Otto, let us look at what the record shows. Because the record here is not built in the goal column, and understanding that is the first step toward understanding what Otto actually was. In 15 NHL seasons, Otto scored 195 goals and added 379 assists for 574 career points. He accumulated 24-15 penalty minutes. He won a Stanley Cup championship with the Calgary Flames in 1989. He represented the United States in international competition. He was a 3-time NHL All-Star. But none of those numbers tell the real story. The real story is in what happened to opposing teams when they tried to establish a physical presence in the areas of the ice that Joel Otto had decided belonged to him. The real story is in what opposing coaches said to their players before games when Calgary was on the schedule. The real story is in the face-off dots where Otto won at a rate that changed what was possible offensively for the Flames in ways that showed up in the standings even when they never showed up next to his name in the box score. That story does not fit in a statistic. It lives in the memory of the men who were there. Mark Messier played against Otto throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s in one of the most intense divisional rivalries the NHL has ever produced. Messier built his own reputation on a competitive intensity that is still discussed as a standard for what the position of power forward demands at its highest level. When Messier talks about opponents who genuinely affected how he prepared and how he competed, his assessments mean something specific, because Messier was not a man who felt that kind of effect easily. Messier said that Otto was the one player in that era who made the space in front of the net feel genuinely dangerous in a way that was not just physical. He said most big players in front of the net are problems you solve with positioning and leverage. You find the angle and you use your own strength and you move them. Messier said Otto was a problem you could not solve that way because the strength was there at a level that made the leverage calculation fail, and the intelligence behind the positioning meant that by the time you thought you had found the angle, he had already closed it. That observation from Mark Messier is not a compliment handed out casually. That is a technical admission from one of the most competitive players in the history of the sport. Wayne Gretzky played the majority of his greatest seasons in the same division as Otto and faced him more times than almost any opponent in his career. Gretzky understood the game from an angle that no other player in history has understood it, and that understanding extended to a precise appreciation of what different types of players contributed to winning and losing at the highest level. Gretzky said that Otto changed what was possible for the Flames in a way that was invisible to people watching the box score, but completely visible to anyone on the ice. He said that Calgary with Otto in the lineup was a fundamentally different team than Calgary would have been without him, not because of what Otto scored, but because of what he prevented. the space he occupied, the physical price he extracted from opposing players who tried to contest that space, the face-offs he won that gave the Flames possession in situations where possession determined everything about what happened next. Gretzky said that the players who change games without scoring are the hardest players in the sport to fully appreciate and among the easiest to underestimate until you have played against them enough times to understand exactly what they are taking away from you. Doug Gilmour was one of the most complete two-way players of his generation and spent years competing in the same division against Otto before becoming his teammate in Calgary. Gilmour said that the transition from facing Otto to playing alongside him produced one of the sharpest single realizations of his professional career. He said that when you play against a player like Otto, you understand that something difficult is happening to you, but the specifics of it are hard to isolate because you are inside the experience while it is happening. When you play alongside him, you can see the mechanism clearly for the first time. Gilmour said watching Otto work from the teammate perspective was like having a film session where everything you could never quite identify from the opposing side suddenly became obvious. The positioning decisions made 3 seconds before the puck arrived. The way he used his body to create outcomes that looked accidental from a distance but were entirely constructed from up close. Gilmour said that understanding what Otto was actually doing made him a better player because it showed him a level of intentionality in the physical game that he had not previously understood was possible. Al MacInnis was Otto's defensive partner in the championship run and one of the most dangerous offensive defensemen of his era. MacInnis said that what Otto provided for the Flames in the 1989 playoff run was something that the talent on that roster could not have produced without him. Not because the talent was insufficient, because talent without the physical foundation Otto provided operated in a different and more constrained version of the game. MacInnis said that when Otto was on the ice, the game opened up for everyone else in a way that was directly connected to what Otto was doing in the spaces the cameras did not follow. The corners, the front of the net, the face-off circle are critical moments. MacInnis said that the 1989 championship was built on many things, but the physical foundation underneath all of it had one name attached to it more than any other. Lanny McDonald scored 500 NHL goals and was one of the most respected players in the league during his era. McDonald said that Otto was the kind of teammate that elite scorers dream about and rarely find, not because of what Otto produced offensively himself, but because of what his presence created for the players around him. McDonald said that having Otto on the ice in critical situations changed the entire physical negotiation of the game in Calgary's favor in ways that accumulated shift by shift and period by period, until by the third period of hard games, the opposing team was operating in a deficit that had nothing to do with the scoreboard and everything to do with what Otto had been extracting from them. Physically, since the opening face-off, that accumulation is the mechanism that most observers never see and that opposing coaches spent years trying to find an answer for. Mike Keenan coached against Otto multiple times in high-stakes situations and said that preparing for Calgary always began with the same conversation. Before discussing offensive matchups or power play structure or defensive zone assignments, the conversation began with Otto, with who was going to be responsible for him, and what the expectations were for that responsibility, and what the consequences would be if those expectations were not met. Keenan said that having to dedicate that level of pre-game attention to a player who did not lead his team in scoring was itself a statement about what Otto was. That the most important preparatory conversation before facing Calgary was about a man whose name would not appear at the top of any statistical category when the final numbers were added up. Keenan said that kind of player is the hardest kind to build a team around because the market never fully prices what he provides, and the hardest kind to face because you can prepare for him specifically, and he will still find ways to make your preparation feel incomplete by the end of the second period. The Hell's Kitchen parallel does not apply to Joel Otto in geography, but it applies completely in spirit. Otto was not a player the sport handed anything to. He was a player who identified what the sport needed from him specifically, and then built himself into the most complete possible version of that thing through work that had no shortcut and no substitute. The physical conditioning, the positioning intelligence, the face-off preparation, the willingness to absorb punishment in front of the net and return to that same position the next shift, and the shift after, regardless of what the previous shift had cost him.